was he writing about someone else?
But I felt that there really weren't any red herrings in this book. And, sometimes they really work. Like with Nantucket Five Spot, there were more red herrings than Fish Market. But it worked for that book. And I don't know if they would have worked in this book.
Every mystery has several suspects you think might have committed the crime. Do you think there was any in this book?
There weren't really a lot of characters in this book.
There were only maybe 2 or 3 more than we listed.
Yeah, really
here in
minor
the whole
characters.
Book.
Other than that, really, the people they talked about, it could only have been Cecil.
And Toomey.
Yeah.
Toomey was
his henchman.
His henchman, yes. He was his minion.
Would you recommend this book to a non-mystery fan? Do you think they would enjoy this story?
I think they would enjoy the mystery part of it. I don't think they would like the backstory of Dolly and her pregnancy. I don't think that would be something a nonfiction reader would really care about. But I think the story of the dog fighting and the backstory with the character of...
Yeah, I think this was like we said, a good character development story. So I don't think that somebody who enjoyed a good story would still get something out of this, because there really isn't a big mystery to solve in this book. We kind of knew what was going on, so to me, it was a story.
Yes.
A good story, but a story.
Now, did you think the book was as long as it should have been, or should have been longer or shorter?
For the type of story it was, I think it could have been a little bit shorter, but not a whole lot shorter. I think I think part of my problem is, since I didn't read the first 3 books...
Yes, we don't know the backstory.
I don't know the backstory of Dolly. And, I mean, they alluded to some of it. The fact that she was abandoned as a child and her grandmother rescued her. But other than that, I don't know a whole lot. To me, that part probably could have been left out and I would have been okay with the story. But I probably would feel a lot different if I had read those other books.
I think I would like to go back and read the 3 previous books.
Yes.
And then catch up and maybe read this one again to keep the continuity of the story going. Now, do you think anybody else's point of view could have told this story? Could you see another character's point of view?
Well, I don't know if I could see that, but I think I would have enjoyed a book from Dolly's point of view. I would have loved to hear her thoughts as she's dealing with Emily and these characters in this book. I think she would have had some interesting things to say.
Well, I think Dolly had... I can't see Dolly sitting down and writing a book about other people.
No, but if they just gave you her thoughts, right. I think that would be pretty funny.
Right. Now, did you feel the story was wrapped up in a good way?
In a neat package?
Yeah.
Yes, I actually do. I loved the ending. I was cheering Freddie on in the end, and, it's a shame he had to get shot, but he still got his revenge before he went out, and I don't think he was in very good shape, so
yeah,
it was probably a relief.
He was a sad-looking...
I liked the last line in the book where Emily thought she could hear Mad Dogs and Englishmen in the far away. I thought that was a great way to end the book.
That brings back my childhood. My father was a Noel Coward aficionado, and he used to walk around and sing that song all the time when I was a kid. And do you think there could have been another ending to this?
Well, obviously, Cecil could have gotten away with it, but that's not what we would have wanted.
No, definitely not.
It was also good that Courtney, his stepdaughter, ended up getting all the money finally that she was denied when her mother passed away. Mm-hmm. So I loved the ending, I thought. And I liked how they kind of alluded to the fact that Omar was the father of Dolly's baby without coming out and saying it. So I
think they said it without saying.
Yes, absolutely.
So Emily just shakes her head because she can't picture that at all. So
here's a good question. Do you think that Dolly and Emily did a good job as our protagonists in solving this crime?
Yes, I think they solved it in spite of themselves, though. Dolly was wrapped up in her issues with the pregnancy, and Emily was kind of wrapped up in worrying about Dolly. I think Emily entered into this thinking it was going to be be a routine job of editing a book. And when she discovered it wasn't, and she got into it enough to realize something's not right here, I think she should have walked away. But that's me.
I think that some of the things she did, she put herself in danger.
Oh, definitely.
And I don't know that was a smart move, but it did end up working out in the end.
Well, number one, if the woman is shot at her house, Lila is shot, and he wants Emily to spend the night at the house, and she does it.
That was a bit much. But.
That's a bit much. I'm sorry. She thinks he's a creep, but she spends the night there? No.
Even though she did sleep downstairs.
She didn't sleep with Cecil, but he didn't want to be alone. So I
couldn't have gotten far enough away from that man and that craziness.
There isn't enough money in the world. I'm sorry. She would have to have the sheriff at her door pulling her furniture out of the house before she would go back and finish this book.
Well, that's something to ponder also, whether Emily would have done half this stuff if she would have been financially stable.
Oh, no. She wouldn't have needed the job.
I would hope she'd tell Jackson where to stick it.
Well, and Jackson was such a swarmy character. I'm sorry.
But he was a necessary character. You gotta have a character like that in the book.
She knew what a sleaze he was, but she lets him lead her around like a little dog and pony show.
Well, that's because she didn't have any money. But then there's poor Jeffrey Lowe that,
She really liked Jeffrey.
Being locked in the room with a bunch of dead people, that kind of rattles you.
Yeah.
And so he hit the road.
Yeah. Well, he was just up in Detroit, so maybe
he'll make an appearance later on.
After he gets his world back in order. So, all in all, I think we liked this book very much.
Now we're going to tell you 2 things we learned from reading this book. Mom's going to start.
Never trust an ex-husband. There's a reason they're an ex. And they aren't going to change. Just look out for your welfare. If your husband knocks on the door, ex-husband, and wants you to go take a job, run the other. Trust me, you'll be happier in the end.
And mine would be that if a book tells you in the beginning that it's going to be dog fighting, guess what? It's going to be dog fighting.
Yes. That was our only real, I wouldn't call it an error because I'm sure the author had reasons to put it in there, but it just kind of went, oh, that's what it is, So it changed the dynamic of reading this story. And if it had been anything else but dogfighting, I really would have been shocked. So,
like I said, it still worked, but
would we read more of this author? Definitely.
Absolutely.
I'm
looking forward to it.
I have read several of the Little Library series, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I haven't read The Nut House, but I will certainly give that a read. And I want to go back and read the rest of The Adventures of Emily.
So we asked Elizabeth some questions like we did our last author, and she was kind enough to answer.
We thank her very much for taking the time to respond to our little nonsense.
I thought this was very interesting because apparently Dolly was based on a real person. So,
yes, that was fascinating.
Yes. Dolly, the real Dolly, once swaggered into a local bar during hunting season, stood at the door with her thumbs stuck in her uniform pants and demanded, "Okay, all you hunters, get your license out where I can see 'em and make it fast." She was very short and very squat and was made fun of a lot. Her walk was a definite swagger, as in come up to the side of your car when she pulled you over for going a couple miles over on one of our 2-lane back roads, demanding license, registration, keep your hands where I can see them, often to one of our very elderly citizens. One of her own accidents was in town. She decided to chase a speeder zipping in behind a car, which suddenly put on its left blinker to make a turn into the supermarket and smashed into a car. She was always in trouble and always complaining about it. Never her fault.
That just sounds exactly like the Dolly that is in the book. So she did a good good job in portraying her. Then we asked her the same 5 questions we asked the other authors. What was the first mystery you ever read? And hers, it said she had to be Nancy Drew. I got a new one for Christmas every year and still have the set. Nancy is in my head still because she was a teenager who had a great car and a lot of freedom to visit old inns and go places I never would have been allowed to go, and to solve mysteries I could only dream of solving. Twice I felt as if I were Nancy. Once on an old golf course that had been closed for years, while walking towards the abandoned clubhouse, a window on the 2nd story opened and a person in the window began waving for me to come forward. I didn't. I ran. I would have too. Another time I was on an island in one of Michigan's lakes, walking across a wide open field that was also part swamp. I came on an old house, small, dilapidated, high weeds around it, no people, no car, no driveway. I looked in a window. There was a crutch leaning against the glass. I could see a table set with dishes and cups and pans on the old range. All was as if the family was coming home at any minute. I had to find out the story of the house and went to see a woman who had lived on the island her entire life. She told me the entire terrible story. It was my first published mystery. I was 12 and entered the story in a newspaper creative writing contest. I took first place. Question 2 was, did that author influence your writing?
I think the answer to this question is buried in the answer above. Nancy Drew taught me to find mysteries everywhere. I meet characters at every Burger King I go to. Sometimes I scare myself to death, well, almost, with my imagination, and firmly believe the world is a mysterious place if only you stay open to it. The third question, what other authors were an influence or had an impact on your writing?
She responded, other authors. For some reason, the poetry of Emily Dickinson. She is always with me. Then Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, Virginia Woolf, P.D. James, Louise Penny, Sue Grafton, Sarah Paretsky. All for the obvious reasons of learning from the best. Probably one of the highest compliments I have ever received was when in an article in Writer's Digest, January 2017, my work was compared to that of Louise Penny. The article was on cozy writers. Question 4 is, what are you writing now?
Writing now? He went out and hanged himself.
Sounds good.
4th in the Little Library series with Crooked Lane books. When this is finished, I have a contract to do a 6th novel to the Emily Kincaid series.
And then the last question was, do you have any public events that we could advertise for you? And her response is, currently I'm teaching a course called In Dark Places, Writing the Mystery at the Glen Arbor Arts Center. But that class is full, and I'm not teaching for a while because I have to write books. The 3rd in the Little Library series will be out on September 15th, 2018. It is In Want of a Knife, based loosely on the ideas of Jane Austen, with a couple of murders thrown in. That sounds good.
Boy, I need more time to read.
So we thank her again very much for answering our questions.
And once again, we will keep in touch with her, and if she's got any upcoming events, we'll be glad to pass those along to you.
Yes. I guess that brings us to the part where we assign our next book.
Our next book will be our C book in our A to Z quest of authors' last names. So this will be Lauren Carr, Carr, and the book is Ice, a Chris Matheson cold case mystery. It has a Goodreads rating of 4.6, wow, with 89 ratings. When Sandy Lipton and her unborn child disappear, the court of public opinion found young Chris Matheson guilty. Decades later, the retired FBI agent returns home to discover that the cloud of suspicion cast over him and his family have never lifted. With the help of a team of fellow retired law enforcement officers, each a specialist in their own field of investigation, Chris Matheson starts chipping away at the ice on this cold case.
That sounds good.
Yes.
Can't wait to read it. It was published in February of 2018, and we did it. It is the first book.
About time.
I
told you we'd get better.
It is the